Welcome to selfprinciple.org. Today we want to look at a really interesting topic, which is what is a better diet to follow? The very popular Mediterranean diet or the also popular low-fat vegan diet? What is the evidence and what can you do to optimize your health? Before we dive into the research, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And as always, I would love to hear your comments and thoughts on this really interesting topic below. So as we dive into the research, it's important to define what exactly is a Mediterranean diet and what is a low-fat vegan diet. So for the Mediterranean diet, the standard definition really is it's a plant-based diet with olive oil and low to moderate amounts of things like meat, dairy, eggs, and wine. And remember the Predimed trial, which is the famous trial where they basically did a randomized control study looking at the Mediterranean diet versus a standard low-fat diet. What they found was that a Mediterranean diet had a reduction of 30% for the people in the study having their first heart attack. All right, let's define a vegan diet. So what is the definition for a vegan diet? Well, it's a plant-based diet that avoids any animal products. So it avoids meat, it avoids dairy, it avoids eggs, and it avoids honey. All right, now that we got the definitions out of the way, let's take a look at this really interesting study that was published by Dr. Barnard's group, and that looks at a fascinating way of looking at this. Most studies, as you know, are looking at population-based trials. They look at a large group of people and they follow them over time. In this particular case, this is a randomized. Remember, randomization is the gold standard when it comes to this stuff. So this is a randomized crossover study. They had 62 adults, and the way they did the study was for the first 16 weeks, the people were randomized to either a Mediterranean arm or a vegan arm. Then they had a 4-week washout where they basically let the folks go back on their original diet, and then they switched them. So whoever was in the vegan arm, they switched over to the Mediterranean and vice versa. Now, things to note is on the Mediterranean side, the diet protocol they followed was the same as the Predimed study protocol. And then on the vegan arm, it was basically a diet that consisted of 75% whole or complex carbohydrates, 15% protein, and 5% fat. And keep in mind, now these are two really important parts of the study. The first is they told all the participants they could eat whatever they wanted. There was no restrictions on calories. And number two, they did not alter the exercise. They were told to exercise the same way they had always been doing and not to change it during the study. So what did they find? Well, let's start with energy intake. So once again, we presented some of this data in other research, but it shows that as you follow a low-fat, whole foods, plant-based diet, you generally consume less calories. That was the same case in this study, where the participants consumed on average about 500 calories less per day than their baseline. In the Mediterranean arm, there wasn't a change in how much calories they were consuming. If we look at the fat intake, this is no surprise, a low-fat vegan diet is low in fat, and naturally that's what they saw was there was a decrease in fat intake in the vegan diet, and there was an increase in fat intake in the Mediterranean diet. Why the increase? Things like nuts, dairy, cheeses, and of course, olive oil. What about carbohydrate intake? Well, no surprise there, the protocol for the low-fat vegan diet was 75% carbohydrates. And so vegan diet had an increase in carbohydrates, and the Mediterranean diet actually had a decrease in carbohydrates. Probably the one thing that I found interesting was the fiber intake. Now, no surprise on the low-fat vegan diet, there was an increase in fiber intake, but it was actually more than what was the increase in the Mediterranean diet, which at its core is a plant-based diet. But because a whole foods, low-fat, plant-based diet focuses so much on whole foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, you get a tremendous amount of fiber with it. So what did they see when they looked at weight loss? Well, in the initial 16 weeks of the study, where they were randomized to one of the two arms, they saw that the Mediterranean folks lost about 3.3 pounds, but the vegan folks lost a whopping 17.4 pounds. And in the second 16 weeks, the Mediterranean folks actually gained 3 pounds, while the vegan folks lost 8.8 pounds. So in both the first session, 16 weeks, and the second session, in both of those different groups, they lost weight. Looking at cholesterol, the Mediterranean diet the total cholesterol went down about 3 points or so, and the LDL went down only about 0.5 milligrams per deciliter. But in the vegan arm, the total cholesterol went down by 18.7 milligrams per deciliter, and the LDL went down by a whopping 15.3 points. That's a very substantial reduction in cholesterol. On the flip side, when they looked at blood pressure, it was interesting that the Mediterranean diet actually had a greater blood pressure reduction than the vegan diet. So in the Mediterranean arm, the systolic blood pressure went down about 9 points, diastolic blood pressure went down about 7 points, versus in the vegan diet, it only went down 3 points from systolic, and the diastolic went down about 4 points. So if you're watching this right now and wondering, what can you do for your own health? Well, a whole foods, low-fat, plant-based diet is an ideal diet when it comes to overall health. We've talked about in the past things like brain health. We've talked about kidney health. We've talked about heart health. Here, we're talking about weight loss. We're talking about cholesterol and dramatic impacts. And if you look at it from an overall planet health, it's the best diet you can follow to keep our planet healthy for the long term. Now, if you're wondering why a whole foods plant-based diet has such dramatic results when it comes to weight loss, the secret isn't that much of a secret. It's basically two things. First is you're eating a calorie-poor, nutrient-dense diet. So essentially, there's all of these fantastic nutrients, antioxidants, phytonutrients that are found in fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds. And you're eating foods that are calorie poor. And that's the whole concept behind this. Number two, they also have a really high content of fiber. And remember, fiber has tremendous benefits, not just for weight loss, but also for things like our gut microbiome. And the number two thing for why a whole foods plant-based diet is so effective is the thermic effect of food. Having all of this energy in food that needs to be burned off, such as fiber and so forth, it actually increases the thermic effect of food, which is how much energy we have to burn to absorb and break down the food. So let's put everything together. And what is the take-home message here? So the bottom line here is, in this 36-week randomized crossover trial that's really well done, what they found was that a low-fat vegan diet had greater reductions in weight loss, had greater reductions in overall fat mass, had greater reductions in those dangerous types of fat called visceral fat, and had marked reductions in cholesterol. On the flip side, the one thing that the Mediterranean diet did better was in terms of blood pressure. But if you're watching this and you're saying, what can I do? Start your journey to adding whole foods, plant-based foods into your diet. No matter where you are in that spectrum, every little bit counts, every little bit helps. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That's how we are able to support this work. I would love to hear your comments on this, and I'll see you next time.